Welcome back. We are doing the draft recap. Last episode was the first round, and now we're going to get down to the post-draft review of each team. If you have opinions, I'd love to hear them in the comments of who you think had the best draft, how you would rank them, or picks that you thought were obscure, or teams that picked a certain player, how you think it's going to pan out. But starting out with Chicago, we all know they went with Bjorn Werner, who is going to be behind. It's Chandler Jones and Henry Melton. But Werner's going to get some opportunities to play, maybe in passing situations. We see cornerback Jonathan Banks. We also have Brennan Williams, Kerwin Williams, Jeff Toole, and Josh Evans. So Brennan Williams, more of a backup. Jonathan Banks also going to have some time to develop behind some like Lito Shepard, Sean Smith, Cresden Butler, Byron Maxwell. They have a lot of cornerbacks, and so we'll see if he's Jonathan Banks, who's like a 64 overall. He not the best cornerback, especially at the second round. However, that's just the name of the game. Kerwin Williams is going to be behind Mark Ingram, Justin Forsett. He's a 57 overall, nothing special there. Tools behind Cutler and Campbell. He'll probably never see the field. And so that's Chicago Bears draft. Then moving to the Bengals. Bengals go with Desmond Trufant, but then bring in the linebacker Alec Ogletree. And Ogletree has a fairly good chance of starting or at least challenging Rob Ninkovich for that left outside linebacker spot. Latavius Murray at running back desperately needed some help there. They were running with Noshawn Marino, who's their starter, Lendale White, Montario Hardesty. So Latavius Murray gives them some more youth. They can kind of not age out, but they might not decide to renew Lendale White or Montario Hardesty and are able to then save the cap space on re-signing a running back. They do bring in Luke Wilson with 2 L's for tight end. He is a 60 overall, joining what is a very weak tight end group with Matt Spaeth and Kellen Davis. They also have Tanner Hawkinson, William Campbell, Jonathan Meeks, and Capron Lewis Moore. And we all know those are probably going to be more bench players, more backups than anything else. Then the Buffalo Bills go with Jonathan Cooper. And then in the second round, instead of going in the first round, E.J. Manuel was there in the second. And so the Bills, just like in real life, draft E.J. Manuel. However, in this franchise, they also were able to bring in Jonathan Cooper in the first round. So probably doing better than what they did in real life. And Manuel is going to be behind Tim Tebow. And then there's John Skelton, who also went to the Buffalo Bills after they got rid of Ponder. And so DJ Swearinger, Rex Burkhead, LeVar Edwards, and Quinton Patton come out here with finishing the Buffalo Bills draft. Nothing major. I mean, they have DeJuan Morgan at free safety, so DJ Swearinger is going to be behind him. We'll see if Swearinger, I don't know how to pronounce it, whatever. However he comes out, sees if he's able to take the starting job in the future, maybe a project here. Rex Burkhead is just behind Deji Karim, D'Angelo Williams. I don't expect much from Burkhead. They also have Daniel Thomas, who is the same overall. Then the Denver Broncos. The Broncos go with Zach Ertz in the first round. They draft Monty Ball in the second round, and they did that in real life. I don't know if Ball went second round or maybe he went third round, but they do bring in a running back there for the Broncos behind Ahmad Bradshaw. They only had Daryl Richardson, a 57 overall, and Chris Polk, a 53 overall, behind Ahmad Bradshaw, and that wasn't good enough. I normally use Brian Leonard, the fullback, who's an 82 overall, in like single back and shotgun formations to alleviate Ahmad Bradshaw, but now Monty Ball, who's only a 61 overall, is definitely going to get some playing time as a second running back. Then you see like Terrence Williams, who's a good pickup for them, 65 overall. He's going to be able to get some time with you look at AJ Green, Miles Austin, Mohamed Sanu, Jeremy Curley. Good receiving room, but he adds a little bit of depth to that room. On defense, we see like Brandon Williams. Brandon Williams, 67 overall, in an older defensive line room with Johnny Jolly and Justin Harrell. Alvin Bailey at offensive line. Bailey there is... I thought he was better than what he was. I guess he's a 61 overall, so not super great. They do get Justin Hopkins, so good kicker, good young kicker available. And then they pick up Michael Williams, who is nothing more than a 53 overall tight end. Then we go to the Cleveland Browns, who've given up some draft picks. We see they don't have no first round pick, but they did bring in some good free agents. Some of them being, let's see, go to the Cleveland Browns here. Browns have brought in Darryl Tapp, Patrick Turner, and Sean Andrews at right guard. They bring back Ottaba Rubin, but they end up drafting Matt Elam there with free safety. They draft right tackle David Bakhtiari, who we all know ended up becoming a really solid right tackle. And so we look at the Browns O-line, which has always been pretty good. They have Joe Thomas at left, Chris Schnee at left guard, Marquise Pouncey at center. They just signed Sean Andrews at right guard after keeping Darren College at right guard, who's 74 overall. And then Shane Olivier at right tackle, who's an 89 overall. However, the Browns line that's been so good for so long is getting older. So Shane Olivier is a 31-year-old star, 89 overall right tackle, so obviously he's starting. But David Bakhtiari is definitely somebody that can fill that role. Maybe if Shane Olivier starts to regress a bit more, Bakhtiari, who is a 69 overall right now, can progress a little bit. They bring in Charles Johnson as a receiver. Right now, they're dealing with Anthony Gonzalez, Travis Benjamin. They traded their 5th-round pick for Roddy White, so they kind of replaced Roddy White with, or they give up a 5th pick, so they get Roddy White with that 5th pick, and they bring in Charles Johnson for some more youth in that receiving room. They signed Patrick Turner as well. They also bring in Jack Doyle at tight end, so they have a young tight end there with Dwayne Allen, who they drafted last year, both 23 years old, and the veteran Ben Watson, and then Brendan Jenkins on the defensive line. Then our Tampa Bay Buccaneers going with Kawan Short in the 1st round, Kenny Stills in the 2nd. So that was a wide receiver that they can definitely add some depth for. They have Jeremy Maclin, Jerome Simpson, but then Josh Gordon, who's Rookie of the Year. And Josh Gordon is probably going to be the number 1, if not number 2 receiver on the depth chart until he gets suspended all the time for his marijuana issues. And so that all the suspensions will happen the same way. What's nice about the franchise tool, the My Franchise tool, you can now put injuries on people. And so I'll just injure him for however long he's suspended. But Kenny Stills is definitely a young, explosive receiver for them. They do bring in Landry Jones, who maybe was a reach in the sense of like a 3rd-round pick on a backup quarterback for Blaine Gabbert. But Gabbert is a 73 overall. Landry Jones is a 59 overall, so clearly he's the backup. But in the real-life situation, Gabbert is just mediocre when I was playing with them. So he doesn't necessarily have firm protection from being let go because I don't think Gabbert's going to command a top QB salary. So drafting someone like Landry Jones does give them a potential bridge quarterback if indeed Blaine Gabbert does not become a superstar overnight. Then you got Spencer Ware at running back. They have Darren McFadden, Javid Best. They signed Ryan Touraine, who's a 57 overall. Spencer Ware is a 59 overall. So they get some depth there in running back. They also bring in Denard Robinson. I haven't decided whether I make Denard Robinson a running back yet. I probably could or should, because I think he also played running back in the NFL. The former Michigan, I don't know if he was a quarterback. I believe he was quarterback. And so he's very speedy. They also draft right guard Zach Allen. And there's another Zach Allen when I looked up headshots, and I just couldn't find the right one. And then Thorold Simon at defensive back. I mean, we're not going to expect much from him, even though he's a 65 overall, and he's better than some other cornerbacks drafted way earlier than him. So he's a good 7th-round pick for Tampa Bay. Then we got the Arizona Cardinals. The Arizona Cardinals brought in Darius Slay in the 1st round. They continue on defense again with Datone Jones. And then they draft Tyrann Mathieu, as they did in real life. Now, Mathieu says cornerback, because that's how the roster had him. I'm going to move him to free safety because they needed a free safety. They do have Denoris Searcy at 71 overall, but Mathieu is a 72 overall free safety. And after they have Richard Sherman from past drafts. They signed Darius Butler. They now have Darius Slay. Butler and Slay are both 77 overall, so they're going to have a good young defensive backfield, even with Harrison Smith at strong safety. Datone Jones has a good chance of succeeding like a Justin Smith and Jared Allen, the 2 pass rushers they signed. Both pass rushers way into their 30s, so they needed some youth, and that's what Datone Jones brings in. Tyler Wilson is just Tyler Wilson. I mean, he's a backup, 54 overall, backup to Andy Dalton. Nothing special there. Ade Ibushi at right tackle, just more of a depth pick there. They had Roger Saffold III, a right tackle, first round pick, 31st. I think they had the Patriots pick when they won the Super Bowl, so he was the 32nd overall pick a few drafts ago. He's never really had much success, so Ibushi is going to fill in that backup role behind King Dunlap and Roger Saffold III for the Cardinals. We see Khalid Holmes, Paul Kruger's brother, Joe Kruger, and then right guard Chris Baker, more of a backup for the Cardinals. Then the San Diego Chargers, they bring in probably one of the best linebackers in this draft class, Jamie Collins, and they also bring in tight end Jordan Reed. So they do have Antonio Gates still. That's still a thing. 86th overall. However, Antonio Gates is getting older. He is 33 years old, and behind him is Brad Cottom at 28. He's 65 overall. Jordan Reed comes in at 23 and 66 overall. Definitely going to be the likely new weapon for Aaron Rodgers. We see free safety Deron Harmon, safety Cooper Taylor. Both of these defensive prospects typically filling backup roles because they have Mike Mitchell they signed for strong safety, who Cooper's behind, and they have Antoine Bethea behind, and then behind him is Deron Harmon. They signed Joe Madsen. They get a corner in Logan Ryan. Logan Ryan is actually a 67 overall. He's going to be likely their fourth string cornerback. So probably their nickel cornerback just found in the 6th round. And then Quanterra Smith, nothing more than a 62 overall backup for the Chargers. Then the Kansas City Chiefs, with no first-round pick, but the first overall pick, they go with Justin Hunter in the 2nd round. Because that was an issue they had, was they had Marquise Colston and Roddy White, older receivers. They signed Brian Hartline. They still have Keyshawn Johnson, who's a 65 overall. Hartline is 73. Chris Carter, definitely not the Chris Carter, but 63 overall. Adri Rotutu, I don't know who that is, but he's a 60 overall. Wide receiver was a need, and Justin Hunter definitely comes in with the attributes you'd want from a number 1 receiver. So Brandon Weeden or Kevin O'Connell, whoever ends up getting the start to this season under Coach Sperano, gets a nice weapon there with Justin Hunter. And then they start going defense for the next few picks. You see the additions of Jonathan Hankins, the defensive tackle from Ohio State, joining Domata Pico, who's an 80 overall, is like furious being in Kansas City. His morale is really bad. So Hankins could be the reason why we trade Pico away from Kansas City, but haven't made that decision yet. They did get David Amerson, and David Amerson's a 71 overall corner. He's only their 5th string cornerback because they have Jonathan Joseph and Tim Jennings, a 92 and a 91 overall, Myron Lewis 75 and Ron Brooks 72. So they get a good rookie there in the 4th round, for depth and to progress underneath some solid, really dynamic defensive backs. And then Devin Taylor, Chris Gregg, Taylor Bray. We all know. Actually, what's ironic about this is Taylor Bray, he's a 51 overall. But Brandon Weeden's a 58, and Kevin O'Connell's a 68. So O'Connell's the best weapon for them on offense to start as quarterback. But Weeden might get it because he's a first-round pick last year. And then Taylor Bray might be able to fight his way to maybe playing a few games. We'll see if that happens. It depends on if Kansas City's garbage or if they turn it around. And then, of course, Brandon McGee and then Jonathan Franklin. Franklin, the 61 overall running back, just backing up Trent Richardson, Kevin Smith, and Anthony Dixon. And then the AFC champion Colts. They bring in Cordell Patterson, who I've debated whether I move him to running back or maybe I just keep my receiver for now because they do have Chris Johnson. They do draft Theo Reddick there in the 4th round. So behind Chris Johnson is now Theo Reddick. Leon Washington came in when Chris Johnson was injured. And so we bring, and Chris Johnson's 98 overall, but Leon Washington, despite playing very well in the playoffs, is a 57 overall. So that's why Theo Reddick was definitely necessary because they need to get more depth at running back. But Margus Hunt, good backup. I don't know if a good backup. He's 66 overall behind Ryan Kerrigan. They've got Andy Studebaker and George Johnson on the right side. But then John Bostic, right outside linebacker there behind, backing up Sean Witherspoon, Nick Becton at left tackle, Chris Jones, not the Chris Jones, but a Chris Jones, 59 overall Chris Jones, and then Jamoris Slaughter for the Colts. Then the Dallas Cowboys, after picking Barkevius Mingo, go with cornerback Robert Alford. And this is another one of those picks where, there's a lot of cornerbacks here. And despite, for a second round pick, he was one of the better ones. 74 overall. He is second in the depth chart behind Jimmy Smith, and then ahead of Asher Allen, Will Blackman, and Parrish Cox. They end up bringing in wide receiver Marquise Goodwin. So in addition to Derek Hagan, who they signed, Kendall Wright, who they drafted first round last year, and Aldrick Robinson, who was a later round pick. I think they still have Greg Little, but Greg Little is not. He's a 63 overall. Marquise Goodwin is a speedster, and that's going to be a big help for Russell Wilson at quarterback. They bring in Rick Wagner back up for Dwayne Brown. Jelani Jenkins. They have DC Jefferson, who DC Jefferson is a 48 overall tight end, so yikes. Rufus Johnson at end, and they also have Corey Fuller, who is a 60 overall, but just adding more options there. When you have that many picks, let's see, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. They have an extra pick, so they went with another receiver there in the 7th round. But there's your Dallas Cowboy draft. Then we go to the Miami Dolphins. So they pick up arguably the best tight end in the draft, but we know Kelsey and we know Ertz are also pretty solid. Miami Dolphins go with Jamar Taylor right after that pick. And so with Jamar Taylor on the team, he's a 73 overall, 4th string corner behind Aaron Ross, Marquise Gilchrist, Sherrick McManus. So they've got some cornerback options, but he's young, can develop behind them. Barrett Jones at center, John Jenkins at DT. Jenkins a 69 overall, John Simon 65 overall, Jaleel Adey 60 overall, and then BW Webb. He's a 69 overall, so not a bad 7th round cornerback. But again, nothing really splashy or stands out for the Dolphins draft other than Eifert, really. A lot of the other picks, they have solid players all around this team, so they don't have as many glaring holes or weaknesses. They do have tight end Fred Davis, who's a 72 overall, and then they have Tyler Eifert, who's a 71, but I suspect Tyler Eifert will get more starts. Then the Philadelphia Eagles, the Super Bowl champions, bring in, of course, Giovanni Bernard. Then they bring in Menelik Watson, who's only a 66 overall, but he's behind Marquise McNeil, who's 81 overall, getting older. They have, on offense, you see Nick Casa, who is only a 52 overall, but the rest of the picks tend to be on defense, where we see William Golston at end, only a 64 overall behind Landon Cohen. We have like Sam Montgomery left end, 65 overall, 1 point above Golston, picked in the 5th round there. Nickel Roby-Coleman is a great 6th round pick. He's 64 overall. He had some, I don't know if he's star or superstar dev, but he had a dev trait. And then John Boyette at free safety is only a 61 overall. But really it was getting Giovanni Bernard was the real gem just to help be the backup behind Frank Gore. Then the Atlanta Falcons. So they had 2 first-round picks, which are definitely delightful. And they got the second round pick from the Seahawks in that deal after giving up their second-round pick. I forget what exactly for. Oh, no, they gave their second-round pick for Braylon Edwards because they acquired him. And so here we see Le'Veon Bell, DJ Fluker, definitely going to be helping Manning out because Fluker's a 72 right tackle, and their current right tackle is Adam Grant at 60 overall. So that was a major improvement. Le'Veon Bell is 75 overall. Behind him is LeGarrette Blount, who's 68, and Jamal Lord, who's 55. So definitely needed. Then we look at defense. Arthur Brown. Arthur Brown is a 64 overall behind Clay Matthews, who's 87 overall. So he's got a little bit of depth there. I thought he should have been a little bit better than that, but it is what it is. Edmund Kugbila at right guard. And then we see 2 DTs, Jesse Williams and Akeem Spence. Williams is 66, Spence is 64. Just backups behind Travis Johnson and Jarrell Worthy. And then Bryce Butler at wide receiver. They lost the other Butler, that was Deion Butler, who's a 97 speed, one of Manning's favorite receiver targets. So they replaced one Butler with a new Butler. Bryce Butler only a 64 overall, though. They still are set with Larry Fitzgerald, 93, Robert Meacham, 81, Braylon Edwards, 79, Joseph Morgan, 67. So their wide receiver room is pretty solid still. Then we got the New York Giants. So the Giants have some decisions to make here because they bring in Luke Jokel. And if Luke Jokel, let me how I phrase it, only came out as a 65 overall, which kind of shocked me. I thought he would be higher than that. But Eugene Monroe is 78 overall. But their left guard is Senor Clemente, who's 67 overall. And that's not really good enough. So I'm expecting Luke Jokel to move to left guard. Now, this is an interesting one. So Matt Barkley would have been a top 10 pick, maybe a first-round pick last year in 2012. And even in real life, he was projected that high. But then Barkley sat at USC, or not sat, but stayed at USC for a year, got injured, didn't play well, and so he went in the 4th round in real life. But the Giants think, you know what, maybe Matt Barkley can be the successor for Carson Palmer. And so we will see if he's able to fulfill that. I mean, Barkley's a 61 overall, Palmer's a 78. Jonathan Crompton, who's been the backup for the Giants, is a 65 overall. So a lot of ground to cover for Matt Barkley, but I think it was a good pick when you look at the challenge that Carson Palmer has, which is he's a 33-year-old quarterback, getting older there in age, so they bring in Barkley there to succeed him. J.J. Wilcox at safety. Nothing really there. I mean, he's a 71 overall, very good, but still behind DeJuan Landry. Mike Gillespie at running back is 63 overall, behind Ryan Matthews, Tawan Jones. They also have Cyrus Gray, but I think Gillespie will beat Gray to make the team. They also man, this is a day. They draft Eric Cook to be a backup there at center. They bring in Josh Boyce at wide receiver, and he's a 61 overall. Probably going to be a 4th string receiver. And then Kwame Gathers at defensive tackle. Gathers there is, let's see, what's Gathers? He's a 59 overall, so he'll be lucky to make the team potentially. Then you got the Jacksonville Jaguars. So the Jaguars, we know, went wide receiver right out of the gate for Tavon Austin. He's only a 69 overall, behind Steve Smith, not the senior, but the giant Steve Smith, so 76 overall. And that Steve Smith had a really good year, over 1,000 yards receiving. Dwayne Jarrett, 69 overall. Excuse me. They acquired Devery Henderson after trading away one of their receivers. And so they really needed some weapon, and they end up getting that with Tavon Austin. They go in with Larry Warford, who is a 68 overall left guard. They have Eric Steinbach, who's a veteran left guard, 74 overall, starting currently. But Warford can very easily come in and take the starting gig at some point due to his age and the age of Steinbach. They do bring in tight end Deion Sims, who's a 61 overall. They got Dante Rosario, 69 overall. Dominic Byrd, 67. Just an overall bad tight end room. Picking Sims at the third round was a good choice for the Jaguars. They just didn't realize that Deion Sims is not going to be the guy. However, I will probably start him and play him more often because of a 3rd round pick and the need for the Jaguars to find something. And I try to play more real life as opposed to Madden, where Madden you just play the best overall people or maybe just the young people. But I try to play it more realistic, that if you draft somebody like that in the 3rd round, you're going to try to get them to start. Then they start getting some defensive picks. We see people like Alex Okafor, who ends up becoming, he's a 67 overall, and he's behind Chris Long. And on the other side, they signed Tamba Hali from Pittsburgh. So he's a backup. Quentin Dial, 67 overall, but he is the 2nd best defensive tackle behind Senderick Marks, who's a 77 overall. We have TJ McDonald, free safety, 72 overall behind Quinton Demps. And I have to decide whether I let Demps start or maybe I give, who's 28 years old, or if I give it to the rookie TJ McDonald. On offense, we got Braxton Cave, center, 57 overall. Hidden Dev, believe it or not. And then Marquise Gray at quarterback. He became a tight end in real life, so I'll probably do something similar with him because Gray is only a 50 overall quarterback. And we have Colt McCoy, Nick Foles, and Chad Henne, so probably not moving on from that. And they still have their Ray Horton head coach, so he's probably going to stick with what he planned out with, like Nick Foles and McCoy. And then we got the Jets, Jets. They go with D. Milliner in the 1st round. They bring in Vance McDonald, who's a 65 overall tight end, which technically is the 2nd best tight end on their team. We got Mercedes Lewis, 75, McDonald, 65, Brandon Myers, 64. Then you got Ryan Nassib, who is the backup quarterback for Alex Smith and Phillip Rivers. I don't know if you were just joining me. Rivers has had a bad career in my franchise. So he is now the 77 overall backup quarterback to Alex Smith, who's a 97 overall. Ryan Nassib was originally drafted by the New York Giants. This time he's drafted by the New York Jets. We got Marcus Wheaton, who's right now the fourth string receiver behind Percy Harvin, Wes Welker, and Jarius Wright. Wheaton, definitely a receiver that needed to be added, some more depth, some youth. They did sign Lee Evans, who's a 65 overall, but Lee Evans is getting a lot older. He is 32 years old, so definitely trying to get some more youth. And then strong safety, Duke Williams. Good backup there. 65 overall behind Kerry Rhodes, 71 overall. And then Xavier Nixon, nothing more than really just a bench warmer backup for Vernon Carey, Levi Brown. But they also have Charles Brown right behind him, who's a 70 overall, so he might not even make the team. Then Detroit. The Lions end up going with Deion Jordan, and then very wisely and very smartly pick Eric Reed in the second round with the fourth pick. So they get the best free safety there. And then and he's a 75 overall. So good for him there. They also have Dallas Thomas, right tackle. And Dallas Thomas is only a 64 overall. But their current right tackle is Jonathan Martin, who's a 67 overall. So there's no guarantee that he's going to stay as starter. Brian Schwenke as backup center. We got Kasim Green, outside linebacker. Caleb Sturgis, their kicker. And then Chris Harper, Harper there is a 59 overall. So we'll see if he even makes the team. Probably practice squad guy. Then the Packers, they draft Sylvester Williams. But they also bring in another defensive prospect in Kiko Alonso. This is the team that has a stacked linebacking core with DeMarcus Ware and Von Miller on both sides of each other. And Sean Merriman moved to middle linebacker since they are a 3-4. And then they also have Kiko Alonso as middle linebacker. Maybe they're a 4. Are they a 3-4? I think they might be a 3-4, which is why Alonso is so important for this team. They have their disguised 3-4. So they needed a better middle linebacker backup, and they got that in Alonso. On defense, they get Catapano, who is just nothing more than a backup behind Ray Edwards, the defensive player of the year. On offense, we see a tight end, Tiolo, who's a 59 overall. They got Jordan Cameron at 68 overall, who's their starter. Tony Moecki at 58 overall. So just, there's some good tight ends in this class and not so good tight ends. And, well, he's one of the not so good. Matt McGloin, backup behind Stafford and Hoyer. Stedman Bailey, a receiver, 61 overall. And then Ryan Jensen, a 66 overall behind Jeremy Purnell, who's 73 overall. Now we got the Panthers. We're getting through this overview. We see Manti Te'o. Then on the offense, they have Christian Michael. So the Panthers are a running team. They have Booker at 76 overall, Ben Tate at 75. Now they're going to begin the transition from getting Booker out and making Ben Tate the lead running back, and then using Christine Michael as the dual running back behind Ben Tate. That's how they've been progressing as a team. They've always had a star running back, and then they have the replacement, or kind of like a dual running back system, so that's going to stay alive. That's what Christine Michael provides them in the second round. J.C. Treader's a 68 overall left tackle, but he might have some chances to move interior this season. They do have Chris Dillman, Dan Connolly, and David DeCastro as left guard, center, and right guard. But Chris Dillman is getting older. Dan Connolly is not even that. Chris Dillman's 32, and Dan Connolly is 30. So bringing in a young J.C. Treader, who's 22, definitely helps them on the offensive line. Trevardo Williams is also brought in. He's 63 overall backup. Stanley Moponga is only 62 overall. And then you look at Ryan Seymour as just a backup behind DeCastro, Zach Dysert behind Flacco and Brody Croyle, and even Tony Pike. Let's see, Dysert is 52 overall, so not really that impressive. New England building through the draft because, of course, their cap space is garbage. So we see Chance Warmack coming in, who will be the starter, 70 overall left guard. Tank Carradine at right end. He is a backup behind Jerry Hughes. Gratz, is 67 overall, more of a fifth string cornerback, because they're set with Darrell Revis, Corey Graham, Robert McLean, Micah Hyde, all in that defensive backfield. Montori Hughes is a bench warmer there for DTs. So they got Broderick Bunkley, 84, Cam Thomas, 78, Damon Harrison, 71. So they're a very stacked team. Then you look at Micah Hyde, Leon McFadden. McFadden there is a 65 overall. So they have a lot of depth with 3 cornerbacks being added to a very solid defensive backcourt already. And then they have Justin Brown, who is a 57 overall. Nothing real special with him. Probably a practice squad guy. Because they have Chris Hogan and Devin Wiley, who are also low-rated wide receivers who are still playing for this team. Then the Oakland Raiders. This is a team that has Starlo Tulele, who is definitely going to be a force with this team. They have Billy Wynn, who is up there at DT with John McCargo, 74, but Starlo Tulele is 71 overall. Robert Woods, this is their weapon since they've lost. They brought in Roy Williams, and then Roy Williams didn't really work out that well for them. They got rid of James Hardy, who went to the Bengals. So they have Julio Jones, Craig Davis, Andre Holmes, Clay Harbor, and then some other junk positions. But Robert Woods comes in, and he's a 66 overall. Will likely be their wide receiver 2, if not wide receiver 3. They do get Teron Armstead. So Armstead, I mean, he was a major dark horse, in his career. Somebody that I think might give Donald Penn the retirement, or the earlier retirement, where Donald Penn has been with the team for a very long time. Let's see, I think, what draft was he in? He's a 6th-round pick many years ago. He's now 30 overall. So if I don't want to resign him because he's an 86 overall, more expensive, Teron Armstead is definitely someone that can replace him. We see Kevon Webster, Malika Goodman. Both of them are more backups here for this team. Let's see. What's the overall of Moten? 71 overall, so he'll probably be the 3rd string cornerback. So actually, I guess I underplayed him. That's actually a very good pick. They have Joe Hayden at 82 overall, Maurice Claiborne at 76 overall, so definitely some solid cornerbacks for Oakland. And then Ryan Moten is going to be their 71 overall 3rd stringer. And then there's Brandon Hogan, who's also he's a 69 overall DB. And then they're looking at Jason Weaver. Jason Weaver is a 59 overall, lucky to make the team. Then we've got Travis Frederick being the first pick for the Rams, as we saw last time. They do bring in Jarvis Jones, who went 1st round with the Pittsburgh Steelers in the real draft, but Jarvis Jones didn't really pan out, even though they did give him a hidden dev. So I guess he is looking fairly good for the Rams here. He is behind Robert Thomas, because he's a 66 overall. So his overall is not that great. But he does have some chance to progress with this team. Then you look at Zach Stacy at running back. That's where they have Tim Hightower as a starter. And then they have Stacy, who's a 60 overall. But they do have Aaron Brown, Mikael LaShore. So they got some other running backs other than maybe the 4th round, Zach Stacy. But Stacy was drafted by the Rams in real life. So we're kind of sticking to keeping that real. They have Ryan Griffin at 60 or 55 overall behind Martellus Bennett and Randy McMichael. Be shocked if he sees the field. Sanders Cummings, 67 overall, might be their 4th string cornerback, might make the roster. Jeff Backa, definitely more of a backup, 62 overall behind Winston Justice, 77 overall. And then Alvin Bonner, I don't even think he's probably going to make the team. He's a 57 overall receiver. Then the Baltimore Ravens. Ravens bring in Ziggy Ansah, and yes, Ziggy Ansah is going to be a starter. I mean, he's right there, right with Marcus Spears, Lamar Houston. Then there's Jake Biquette, who's 67 overall. But Ziggy Ansah definitely going to get a lot of playing time. He's their 2nd overall pick. I expect him to be pretty good in Baltimore. Probably better in Baltimore than he would be in Detroit, like he was in real life. They do bring in Gavin Escobar with the 2nd pick in the 2nd round. They have Kevin Boss, 69 overall, Escobar, 60, and then Dustin Drescher at 59. Now, Brian Winters is coming in as right guard, 68 overall. He's a backup behind Ramon Foster, who is signed in for agency. They do draft Kyle Juszczyk, who went to the 49ers in real life. Very solid receiving, good pass catching fullback, good blocking fullback. They have Chris Thompson, who's going to be the third running back behind Ray Rice and the newly acquired Donald Brown in free agency. They also have Jordan Mills at left tackle. He's 65 overall, backup to Sebastian Vollmer. Vincent Painter, 71 overall, behind Cordy Glenn. And then you have Philip Thomas, who is 61 overall, probably won't make the team. Then you got the Commanders. Commanders taking Lane Johnson, number 1 in the first round, and then Travis Kelce. So this is really a good first 2 picks by the Commanders here, because Lane Johnson, 74 overall starter, immediate and long-term starter, and then Travis Kelce, 73 overall, possibly one of the greatest tight ends of all time. So those are 2 really big hits for them that are nailing the head. They do have Donta Hightower at middle linebacker, and then there's Kevin Minter to be the backup behind him. Left end Demontre Moore, 63 overall, behind Frosty Rucker, who's been a solid pass rusher his entire career. And I think he's always been with the Washington team, drafted by the Redskins, I believe, and then transitioned into the Commanders. And then Stacey McGee, 65 overall, likely third, fourth stringer. Cornelius Washington, I don't know why he's bigger than everybody else, his line, but he is a backup, 61 overall, to Darrell Blackstock, 76 overall. And then Lamar Matty, he's just going to be a backup, 59 overall, to Justin Smiley. We're getting through it. I know this is a long video, a lot of teams to recap. So we got the New Orleans Saints. Saints have Byron Leftwich, who's 67 overall, Geno Smith, 64. So Smith might have a chance to start because he's a top 10 pick, but I also might decide to start Leftwich and give Geno Smith some time to develop. And I think Madden 25, if I'm using a Madden 25 roster, has that ability to have young players develop even on the bench better than other Maddens. Then Kenny Vaccaro is a good real-life pick for them, 71 overall. He's an immediate plug-and-play starter. They do have Ace Sanders as well. Ace Sanders, only a 59 overall. Really, technically a bad wide receiver pick for the third round. We got Brandon Marshall, 80. Deion Butler, the speedster from Atlanta, 73. Then Clyde Gates, Tim Toon, David Nelson, all like lower 60s. Ace Sanders is below all of them. They did need a receiver, but Sanders is not going to probably make the cut for them in what they're looking for. He'll make it on the team, but probably not the impact they hoped. Xavier Gooden, 61. Hodges Jr., 65. Both are backups. Hodges probably has more upside because he's behind Trent Cole, and Trent Cole on the right outside linebacker spot is 30 years old, so he's getting older, and so I suspect that Hodges has a chance to replace him, but I'm not guaranteeing it. They do draft 2 quarterbacks like the Washington Redskins did back in 2012, but BJ Daniels is just there to fill roster spot. Then you got right tackle John Wetzel. He's a backup. And then you have Joseph Randall there. Randall is a 58 overall. You got Rashard Mendenhall, Isaiah Peed. Isaiah Peed is a first-round pick last year, and then Edwin Baker. So Randall might be able to get the third seed in the roster spot for running back, but no promises, no guarantee. Then you got Seattle. They were doing some maneuvers this year to get some more and different picks. As you can see, they end up getting the Falcons pick, I believe, there for the second round, which is why they went back from the 6th pick to the 25th. But they have Eric Fisher, who's going to be they have Charlie Johnson at left tackle, but Eric Fisher comes in at a 69 overall, but he's definitely the future. You have DJ Hayden, who comes in the second round, and DJ Hayden is a 73 overall. And the defensive backfields there is Cortland Finnegan, 78 overall, Justin Miller, 78. Justin Miller was one of the leading DBs in interceptions. Then there was Ross I. Dowling, who's 73 overall, and Hayden ties him for the third. And he'll compete for that third spot in the defensive backfield for the Seahawks. With Eli Manning getting older, we bring in Mike Glennon. So a 32-year-old Eli Manning and a 23-year-old Mike Glennon. They have a similar type of strong arm, which is their scheme fit. So it made sense for me to draft Glennon as opposed to one of the more mobile quarterbacks. Then Sio Moore, just more depth there. He's a 63 overall behind Koamisi. Sean Williams, 68 overall, and has a chance to compete with the Jamarcus Sanford signing that the Seattle Seahawks did this offseason, because Sean Williams, surprisingly, ties him at 68 overall. Then there's a few other cornerbacks they went with, like Ree Wilson and Will Davis. Will Davis, 67 overall. Wilson, 68 overall. More so behind Hayden, though, because Hayden being a first-round pick is going to get more playing time. And then Mike James, just a backup running back behind McGahee, Javon Ringer, Marshawn Lynch, and Turbin. Mike James there, only with a 60 overall. Then Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh having fewer picks here than most times, but they have Sharif Floyd, and Floyd comes in at a 66 overall. There's Dan Williams and Sammy Hill. Sammy Hill, a free agent acquisition. Sharif Floyd, the young defensive tackle. But really the best pick probably of their entire draft was Keenan Allen. This is a team that has been working with Emmanuel Sanders. They drafted Michael Floyd last year. They had... I forget who else they had that they were working with, but they needed that extra spark on the receiving core. And so we have Aaron Dobson, Vincent Brown, Ronald Johnson as backups, but it's Keenan Allen that's going to be the main star coming out of Pittsburgh. And just imagine Ben Roethlisberger and Keenan Allen. I mean, that's crazy. That's like the Rivers-Allen connection, just a little bit tweaked. Then you got Michael Rivera, who's the 51 overall behind Delaney Walker and Jared Cook. Shamarko Thomas, a strong safety there, who is just a 69 overall behind Dante Whitner, who is the best cornerback or best safety in the league. And then Aaron Dobson, I mentioned his name, is one of the depth players, 65 overall for Pittsburgh. Definitely needing some wide receiver depth. And then Houston, best pick there, DeAndre Hopkins. I mean, you can't go wrong with him. And I just felt that made him home. 77 overall, definitely needed. Then they bring in Eddie Lacy as well, who's only a 60 overall, but he's behind C.J. Spiller, Cedric Benson. But Benson is a running back who's way past his prime. He's 30 years old. So bringing someone like, they had Kendall Hunter, I think last year or 2 years ago, and now they bring in Eddie Lacy. I think that's a very easy decision. They have Earl Watford as a backup behind Mike McGlynn, Jordan Hill, a defensive tackle behind Dre Moore, Stephen Pease, Barry Cofield. Jordan Hill's only a 63 overall. And then Earl Wolf is 65 overall. Strong safety behind Mike Doss. Only two more teams left. We have the Tennessee Titans. Titans come in with Xavier Rhodes, who is a 76 overall. It's going to be D'Angelo Hall and him as the starters. Then you've got Justin Pugh, adding some depth to their right tackle. Jordan Gross is 75 overall, but also very old. So Justin Pugh is going to be Jordan Gross's replacement very shortly. Benny Logan on the defensive line. He's only 68 overall behind Fletcher Cox, Paul Soliari, and Corey Peters. You got A.J. Klein, who's 66 overall behind Anthony Spencer. Spencer's a 84 overall. And then David Quessenberry, backup left tackle. Andre Ellington, just some depth running back for them. He's a 56 overall. Actually, honestly, he might not even make the team. And last but not least, we have the Minnesota Vikings. Vikings going with Sheldon Richardson. Richardson's going to make a big impact for this team as a starter, 76 overall. Better than Philomola, and then better than Nick Fairley, who was a pick a year or two ago. And so that's some major upfront help for run defense against a tough NFC North. You look at Hugh Thornton, who, these are one of the picks that I didn't think was that good, and he's not that good because he's only a 66 overall, but they do have Will Beatty, who's a 73 overall, so it's not that terrible of a choice. Jonathan Cyprin, a free safety. I know Cyprin, a very common name I knew from before, but he's a 68 overall behind Will Allen. You have a right outside linebacker, Sean Porter, 59 overall, so pretty weak fourth-round pick there. And then they come down to some fun picks there with Adam Thielen, 78 overall, and Tavares King, who's a 62 overall. The receiving core for Minnesota is Doug Baldwin, Harry Douglas, and they traded for Marquise Colston. That's why they're missing their sixth-round pick. But adding Adam Thielen is going to be a major slot receiver support for this Minnesota Vikings team. So hope you enjoyed this video of the draft recap. Hope you your favorite team drafted well. I don't know which team is your favorite, but let me know in the comments if you liked your draft or if you think that one team was better than the other and why. But please subscribe to this channel and leave a like. Thanks.